I've wet the sky with a large flat brush and I'm just now painting wet in wet with a mixture of ultramarine and the Venetian red, but you could use cobalt blue and light red or even just cadmium red as well. And I'm going to paint a little bit of the Naples yellow wet in wet onto the horizon. So while that's drying off, I'm painting the sheep wet on dry with my size 6 brush with some diluted Naples yellow. If you look at the photograph, which I took only just last week, you'll notice that there is no snow on the grass, but I've decided to make this a winter scene. And that's the wonderful thing about painting. You can create your own scene, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. And that's the reason why I'm painting the sheep Naples yellow, so they stand out as well. And they look lovely and soft also. I've painted a little bit of shadow underneath their bodies and just to sort of describe some of the shadows on their legs using the ultramarine with the Venetian red, damp into damp, using my size 4 brush. I'm painting some shadows now with the mixture of ultramarine and Venetian red, wet on dry, so it just sort of makes them look like they're on the snow. They're casting some shadows, imaginary shadows, and I'm just softening them now with my size 4 brush. It's been diluted, it's a damp clean brush, and just softening those shadows. I'm painting some imaginary shadows as well in the foreground just to give the painting some depth, using my size 10 brush, wet on dry. And now I'm painting behind the top of the sheep because I felt they weren't standing out enough, using that shadow colour of ultramarine Venetian red, wet on dry, and again softening them with a damp clean brush, getting rid of that hard edge of the watercolour paint. So I'm going to let my painting dry. Once your painting is dry, what I'm doing now is I'm painting the rooftop with, again, a mixture of the ultramarine with a tiny touch of the Venetian red, so it's a blue-grey colour. What's great about using just 3 colours, you are in control. You know, you can really sort of paint your colours with a little bit more confidence, and it really does help. So I'm carefully painting this rooftop here. I've still got the masking fluid on the front of the building, but again, if you don't use masking fluid, just paint carefully the rooftop there, trying not to get anything on the white area there. Just ignore what I'm doing now because it's actually on masking fluid and it actually gets rubbed off. But I will paint those windows later again. I'm also painting the chimney pots here with a touch of Venetian red watered down, using my size 6 brush now with a mix of ultramarine and some Naples yellow, painting wet on dry some of these distant trees and hedgerows here, trying to use the belly of the brush to get a lovely sort of textured effect as well over those white posts there, which are actually in the photograph. Again, using my size 6 brush here, working wet on dry, painting bigger sort of trees here just to create a little bit of depth in the painting by using scale. Larger things come forward, smaller things recede, painting this ultramarine and Naples yellow mix. I'm now using the same mixture, just a little bit more ultramarine and slightly creamier paint, painting damp into damp here. So I've got some shadow colours in those trees there and even more darker shadow colours. And I'm adding a little bit of the Venetian red as well, just to really create some contrast here, working damp into damp. I'm using a cocktail stick now to scratch into the damp paint to create the look of branches and twigs in the distance there. You can use a plastic card as well, just to say this is permanent. I'm just painting some of the features now with my size 4 brush, working wet on dry on the faces of the sheep, keeping everything really simple. Even if you can see more details in the photograph, try not to be tempted to paint them because it will just draw you in. And when I looked at this field of sheep, which I absolutely love, by the way, and this sheep looking at me now was actually looking at me from the field as well when I was taking photographs, so I thought that was really cute. So I'm just sort of painting this sheep now with its head down, and it's quite nice. And you've noticed as well, I didn't paint all the sheep in the photograph. I kept it really simple. But if you want to and you like to, you could also add more sheep and change them around and position them where you think they look good. You don't have to literally copy a photograph to make your painting work. As you saw there, I added some grasses and some more shadows under the sheep and softening as I go. I do think it's a good time to allow my painting to dry. Once it's dry, I am rubbing off the masking fluid with a paper towel to reveal the light and white of the house and those fence posts in the distance there. I'm just adding a little bit of the Naples yellow and ultramarine and just filling in and making some of these posts a little bit smaller. They were a little bit too large and came forward there. And I'm just adding a few more darks. I'm painting the house now wet on dry using my size 4 brush with a mixture of the ultramarine and the Venetian red. Very small, not too dark, the windows. They can come forward if they're too dark. So I'm just painting a little bit to the side here, rinsing off my brush, getting a little bit more of a pale down colour and painting some of the shadows under the eaves there, wet on dry. I'm also painting some of the shadows down the side of that chimney breast there and a little bit more under the eaves, just finessing as I go. It's a good time now to allow your painting to dry. Once it's dry, what I'm doing now is I'm painting some shadows on the left side of the building there, obviously on the left side of the chimney as well, and just sort of finessing, just darkening things up. It's actually quite a small area, so do use a small brush if you feel comfortable. I'm just adding some darks and details with my size 4 brush, wet on dry, just to create some texture in the foliage around the house and in the distance, covering up some of those fence posts as well. I felt there was too many there, so it's always good, you can make changes in watercolour. So what I'm doing now is I'm just painting some grasses with my size 4 brush, wet on dry, just to kind of really bring that foreground forward with a mix of the ultramarine and the Venetian red. And I'm just softening and painting some shadows under the grasses and under the sheep as well, just to really sort of bring them out. Again, allow your painting to dry. Once it's dry, you don't have to do this, but I love to do this to make it a really snowy winter scene. I've watered down some Winsor & Newton white gouache. You can use white watercolour, white acrylic, or even white acrylic ink. And I'm spattering with my size 10 brush. Really load that brush and spatter. Hold the brush firm in your hand and tap in the middle of the brush. And try not to sort of point the brush downwards. It works so much better that way. I'm removing the washi tape to reveal a lovely white border. It gives you time to assess whether you need to do any more to your painting, but also it presents your painting really nicely if you aren't going to frame it. So here is the finished painting. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and that it inspires you to have a go at painting a winter scene and creating your own picture as well, deciding on where you're going to put certain elements, etc. If you have any questions about this tutorial, please put them in the comments section below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel where you'll get updates of my latest tutorials. If you'd like to learn more about watercolour, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? Details about that can be found on screen or in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.